Hi, and welcome to All Things Rec Chat, where students and professionals talk about all things collegiate recreation. I'm your host, Rochelle Williams from Western Washington University, where I'm the Aquatics and Youth Programs Coordinator. Thanks for joining us live today, or on our archived YouTube channel, or on IGTV. We are excited to have some members of the Rec Chat committee with us today. If you're following along on Twitter, we'll be asking some of the questions a little bit later, and we would love to hear what you have to say. We will be having a discussion about creating just a conversation around creating anti-racism frameworks in regards to what we're doing personally and also professionally. So before we introduce my other committee members, I want to make sure that we share our gratitude with our friends at NERSA HQ for all of their support. If you haven't already, make sure to follow them on Twitter and Instagram at NERSA Live. Also, did you know that RecChat is on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok? Make sure to follow us at #RecChat. So without further ado, I will let our panelists start by introducing themselves. So could you tell us your name, position, institution, and what is your favorite season and why? And let's start with Amber.
That last question's tough. My name's Amber Graham, and I'm the Assistant Director for Rec Sports at Texas A&M San Antonio in San Antonio, Texas. I just got the loudest email notification in my headphones just now. My favorite season, man, it's probably going to be spring/summer, which is ridiculous because it's cold right now, so maybe I'm just feeling a little jaded. But I did track in high school and college, so I really like, going outside to work out. So I would say sunny. Spring in Texas can be cold or hot, so more towards the summer probably.
Hello, everybody. My name is Erin Sanders, and I use she, her pronouns, and I am at Appalachian State University, where I currently serve as the Assistant Director for Sports Programs and Communications. Starting in May, I will be working as the Assistant Director of Member Services and Communications. So I'm excited about my next step. My favorite season and why? My favorite season hands down is summer. And I thought it was maybe just because I like the beach a lot, even though I'm at the mountains. But I just recently realized and connected the amount of vitamin D I get naturally in the summer, as opposed to the winter. And I have started taking vitamin D supplements with that connection, and I have felt a lot better. So I think I just naturally feel better with all the sunshine.
Great, and we've got just in time for Alejandro. Could you please, I'm muting you. All right, Alejandro, if you could please let us know what your name is, where you're from, and what your job is, and also what your favorite season is and why.
Okay. Alejandro Herrera. I am from Fort Worth, Texas originally, but currently live here in Palos or Willowbrook, Illinois, working at Moraine Valley Community College Health, Fitness, and Recreation Center as the Assistant Director of Operations and Guest Services. And I would have to say my favorite season is definitely summer. I'm a very active person, love being outside, and I can't wait to start golfing in hopefully a month again.
Great, thank you so much. And my favorite season is definitely also summer. I love swimming outside and teaching lessons outside and just being outside and also being tan. That's my best life. So yeah, thanks so much. And we're going to go ahead and roll into our general focus for today is thinking about progress, not perfection. So we are all working to make DEI work a part of what we're doing as an instrumental part of staff training, how we function, how we hire, and not just an add-on. So that's our focus for our conversation today. So let's start with Amber. And could you talk to us about what some of the barriers are you are experiencing in planning and facilitating DEI training?
Right. So just to be totally transparent, I mean, right now we're working to fill a couple vacant positions within our department. So definitely personnel is a huge struggle for us right now of just getting some professionals that, can reach out and talk to the students. We have a DEI, or it's PCOE, it's our President's Commission on Equity. So they do a lot of our DEI work as an institution. So the things we're doing right now are trying to push our students to, one, be aware of the DEI events that are going on in workshops, and then allowing them to, say if they can block that off during their schedule, that, hey, I really want to go to this, absolutely go to this. So right now, a lot of it is personnel and trying to, conserve our bandwidth at this moment, but utilizing our PCOE on campus has been really helpful.
Great, thank you. And then Erin, what about you?
Yes. So bandwidth, definitely I can relate to that, Amber. And the maybe a different barrier I'm experiencing is meeting people where they are and being intentional to meet them what they are, to be able to give them the information for them to grow and learn. So knowing that we have people all over the place with different lived experiences and creating that vulnerable environment to have the tough conversations surrounding DEI, because some of them can hurt, because it's a realization of, wow, I didn't realize I was doing X, Y, and Z, and my intent was this versus the impact. So like being very intentional to help to ensure growth is happening in those teachable moments, when we do have a lot going on and we have high expectations of product output, but also wanting to really focus on the human connection that happens in our space.
Thanks, Erin. And then Alejandro, do you have anything you'd like to share?
There it is on mute. So this would be more of a new territory for us right now, in terms of, just as Erin said, what's going to be the best approach to navigate it and really educate and know what, not tackle it all at once. And I think one of the good ways that we are trying to find that out and trying to get through that barrier is working with our student leadership team right now and asking what are some of the main things that you're witnessing, that you're discussing amongst each other, that we should begin to address. And I think, that barrier is going to be, when can we schedule that? When can it happen? How many can we get to attend, and find it purposeful? So, and since could be a training, and since we want to maximize opportunity for everyone to have the opportunity to participate, would we do a training rate for that? And do we have the budget for that? So that would be, the barrier, but hopefully a solution.
Great, thank you. And at where I'm currently at, one of the barriers that we're facing is a university that is playing catch up in creating positions and resources to make DEI work an integral part of the entire university. And that there's a lot of stuff going on at the director level, but when you go down towards like our departments, there aren't a lot of resources that are necessarily being shared within our departments to make this a priority. There aren't a lot of frameworks that are being shared with the directors. They're just saying, oh, you should go make DEI work a focus, but they're not providing any type of framework or any type of real support. They're trying, right? Like y'all said, like this is newish, and like this is something that they're trying to figure out how to support people. So we have been focusing on trying to overcome that by doing just some internal, like, anti-racism book clubs and bigger conversations that we're having that are aligning with our university goals and standards. All right, well, we will go ahead and move on to the second question. So Alejandro, you talked a little bit about budget as a concern. So what alternatives have you been utilizing when face-to-face trainings are not feasible due to time, capacity, budget, that type of stuff? And Alejandro, why don't you start?
Okay, thank you. So especially with post-pandemic, what were we doing to try to again maximize participation? So I'm pretty sure everybody's familiar with Zoom. So we were definitely using Zoom a lot, and making sure that those communications were given well in advance to prepare, and know what we're going to discuss, whether it's risk management, customer service, things of that nature. Also, other opportunities because again, with post pandemic, we were not having in-person meetings. Was also trying to find unique ways that they weren't always just hearing it from the pro staffs themselves, but maybe guest speakers. That took some vetting to do. Reaching out, was able to reach out to one was really cool. Lee Cockrell from Walt Disney. He was a retired associate senior vice president of operations. He did it pro bono, and gave that opportunity to talk about customer service and what it was to kind of build yourself as a leader. So, and it was defining those ones that said, yes, these are paid and these are not paid, but finding a way to promote them though to get them in. As far as additional alternatives for face-to-face training that we were doing, I would just have to say it's been all Zoom, but one thing to take into account was providing those options to the students. Will these days work? Will these timeframes work? What's gonna maximize that opportunity? So really having to dig deep instead of just saying this is a one-stop shop and you either attend or you don't. But if you really can't, we have those recordings too. So
Great, thank you. And then I feel like the recording part of it is really important as far as creating a more equitable training environment moving forward. Um, Amber, do you have anything you would like to add?
Yeah. So I think, in addition to what Alejandro said, now this is a capacity question too, but creating any sort of standalone trainings or courses. Maybe if your university has a department, we're lucky enough, fortunate enough to have that. That they're working on DEI certificates and inclusive teaching. So they're working on a lot of the faculty staff side right now. But they also are available for student sessions. Um, is there any sort of partnership there where we can create a standalone certificate for student workers? Which that would be, that's a capacity question there is, do we have the bandwidth to do this? So utilizing Zoom, obviously, yes. So we use Discord as well. We've had several, especially during the pandemic when we were locked down, we had several sessions where we all met on voice chat and just let the students talk about what they were going on, what they were feeling, which is wonderful. But I think having that extra support of either a recording, some sort of standalone reflection, a place where that conversation can live and be archived and added onto as needed, I think would be awesome.
Thanks. And then Erin, what about you?
Yes, yeah, figuring out how to do the work without the face-to-face is a challenge, and time capacity, what have you. And what we've tried to do and what I've seen is when we do have information, shooting an email out to share that information, whether it be a short video, whether it be a article, something that it's like, if I can get it in front of their face, they're maybe likely to look at it, maybe not, depending on what it is, but they see that, that is a priority to us. Another space that we've ventured down is taking time out of the face-to-face that we do have to have a minor conversation. So not a major conversation, but a minor conversation. Just this afternoon, we took our chief of diversity officer's email that she sent that was celebrating Black History Month, and talked, and very applicable to our campus and our campus community and different spaces and activities that were going on, and just chatted about it and asked who's gone to that? What was your experience? Did you know this existed on our campus? And almost all of the students were like, I deleted that email. So it kind of contradicts a little bit of what I just said, but in the same space, it's like, okay, that was a campus-wide conversation that was happening via email. Let's have it with the students and just kind of get their reactions. And then we are celebrating Black History Month through a little communications method of sharing stories of Black people. And it's like next month we look to do Women's History Month. And even though those are not the deep, like maybe connection points that are bringing those aha moments, that's still DEI work. And so that still is progress. And so that's where it's like, okay, if we can start making this a part of our language now, where is that going to take us later? And we're hoping it's those really deep, impactful trainings and experiences that they have with themselves. Is hoping to set that framework.
Thank you. And I'm just going to kind of echo some internal conversations that this committee has had in capacity and in trying to work to include DEI work and focus it and have these, points of access when you're also just trying to survive. And kind of being at a point where, Aaron, I really like what you said as far as just like shooting emails out, because that's something that I was able to, I had these grand plans of, having all of these DEI conversations at all of my staff meetings and trainings and all of this stuff throughout the year. And we started off the year strong, but then with COVID restrictions and scheduling and just the general stress of the last year, my capacity has diminished to do more than my job as prescribed. And trying to do more than that kind of comes in like, it ebbs and flows. So it's really challenging to add anything additional to what we're currently doing, because I am trying to live my life as not do more with less. I'm trying to do with what I have. And because I don't get paid enough to do more. I need to, none of us get paid enough to do more. So I am hopeful that I can either create a head guard position of kind of DEI work or head guard position of training maybe in the future. And in the summer, when I don't have camps, I can try to focus on delegating some of that work to help kind of with that support work to kind of, share it with some students, because they're the ones that it's for them and it's for everyone else. So those are some of the ways that I'm trying to kind of like cope with my capacity and also bring students into the conversation, because as much as I like to think I know what they want and need, I don't. So it's good to listen to them. So I appreciate y'all's input. As we're talking about training for students, do y'all have any recommendations for trainings or certifications that you have seen or that you've been able to complete yourself or share with other people? And let's start with Aaron.
Yes, thank you. And training, my personal development is very influential on, the work that's being done in the program that I work with, right? And the students that I work with. The one that comes to mind that I like to share out is a long talk about the uncomfortable truth. It was actually something that NERSA put on. That's one of them is, the long talk about uncomfortable truth. And it was an anti-racism activation. So the leaders of this program were very excited to share their story and then also give us space to process what we need at that point. And very well met me where I was, but yet met everyone where they needed to be. So everyone was great wherever they were. We were all in this shared space trying to figure all this out and opening the space for some really great conversations and understandings and sharings of resources. But yet challenging me to be a little bit uncomfortable so that I could grow. So nothing was like sugar coated. It was very real in my face. This is what's going on. But sometimes that approach also helps you realize and get out of this unrealistic environment that we paint that everything's fine when it's not. So that was one. Another training that I went through that really has shaped my philosophy and approach to working with students has been restorative justice. It has been a restorative justice training with Tony, and I'll find the information and share it out here in a second. But looking at how we address harm and not using harm to address harm and what that looks like. And they gave me a lot of tools and frameworks to kind of think about situations a little bit differently, and then also inspire me to look at the ways that we work with intramural participants and when they do something gooberish and we're having to have a conduct conversation. And then not only just them, what does that create for our community and the community standards that we are trying to create through the experience. So a long talk about the uncomfortable truth and also restorative justice training.
Thank you so much. Amber, what about you?
So the biggest thing that we have, like for our campus, so we're a Hispanic serving institution. We're on the south side of San Antonio in a low socioeconomic area. So I have naturally been able to get Dreamer certified, like Dreamer Ally certified, learn about Undocu Ally. Right now I'm doing an inclusive excellence teaching certificate that's done in-house through our DEI area. So I would say, if you're passionate and you want to learn more about DEI and you look around your area and it's not reflective of what's going on in your community, that's probably indication that something's wrong, that your university is out of touch, or that could help you seek out those resources. Maybe they're there and you didn't know. So I think, for me in the area that we're in, it's critical. We have to do these things. A lot of it is we have to, because that's literally what the students need. Is they need help with, they need help understanding what their rights are as whatever their status is. So I would say look internal first. So those internal opportunities for me are some of those things that I listed. But also, if it's not what's reflected in your university, what about the community? Is there things within the community that are reflective? Because if there's DEI work going on, a lot of time it doesn't have to be a paid for certificate or training. It may be a networking space in the community. So getting more on the civic side. So I'd kind of recommend that. I don't have specific trainings that I'd recommend though.
Great, thank you. And then Alejandro?
I gotta get used to this unmute button. Just two quick things. Every time we do have a new employee, we use our LMS safety skills training that does include diversity and in the workplace, diversity and inclusion in the workplace. So that does kind of give a jump start to what the expectation and understanding is within our work environment and what you should be aware of. And I think with that training, one good way to we have not done yet, but just thinking off the top of my head for future new employees is after that training, maybe hold a post training after that, to have that discussion. What did you learn? What was some questions or some curiosities that you are trying to want to get answered? And of course that's going to take with me educating myself too a little bit more, and then I think as Amber said, kind of having like a committee, especially like right now, Black History Month, and being able to maybe host like a meeting or anything that does revolve around any topics of Black History Month. So one was back in February 4th, to be part of the history series of revitalization versus gentrification panel. So given those opportunities to be part of, if they so choose to be. from a more opportunistic standpoint than a paid standpoint. So.
Great, thank you. And I have a couple of certifications that I went through, and then I also have some podcast recs. So I was able to go through the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in the Workplace certificate that was offered through University of Southern Florida. And it was a really cool thing that they blasted out, and there was like 200,000 people that did it throughout the country because it was free. And it was it was so helpful. And I think that they are, it was all online, it was self-paced, and it was, I think, 7 weeks. So I would suggest checking out that because I think they have it available. There's also an Indigenous Canada certificate through University of Alberta that was really interesting to learn about the history of colonialism in Canada while also learning about the Indigenous peoples of Canada. So that was really helpful. And I do live in the United States, but it still was a really good perspective on Indigenous people and again, like a really good look at the colonialization and kind of brutality of Canada. And then I also have been able to complete Anti-Racism 1 and Anti-Racism 2, which was a two-part certificate through University of Colorado, Denver. And that was through Coursera. So it was free. And all of these are free. And they've all been self-paced and very reflective and like really, really helpful frameworks for incorporating the kind of ideas and content into life and also work. And then I would also recommend there's a podcast called Telling Our Twisted Histories, which is from the Canadian Broadcast Network. And it is a look at the kind of reclamation of certain verbiage in Canada among Indigenous communities. So when they hear a word like obey, like thinking about that word in the, colonial standpoint or the colonization standpoint and what that means to them and how they're starting to reclaim that. Same thing with like the word school. And that was especially with like everything happening with the residential schools in Canada right now. That was super, super interesting. And then also there's a podcast called This Land. That was a really good kind of historical look. And the podcast 1619 was also very, very interesting. And then if you're looking for good history stuff to give you like better context about kind of like racism or colonialization or anything like that, there's a podcast called Behind the Bastards. And I don't know if I can say that word on this, but oops. And Behind the Bastards, I'm going to say it again, is a really good podcast about all things kind of history. And the host takes a really good deep dive look at sometimes it's people that like maybe like that people are like, oh yeah, they've done a lot of good, but sure they did some good, but like what they actually did in real life was terrible. So it's been very interesting to learn the historical context behind a lot of people that like buildings are named after, or people that like we learn their super whitewashed history in school. And so that's been really helpful for me to like have that context to then have those broader conversations in the workplace or with students when people maybe say things or like relay historical context that is not actually fully accurate because of the way that they were taught it in school. We're going to answer a question from somebody watching, or from Sam watching live. So Sam is asking, how do you balance your EDI work with broader work being done on campus? They're trying to keep a recreation focus on their EDI work and not completely duplicate other departments' efforts. Does anybody have anything that they would like to add to this? Or is there anyone that would like to answer that question?
I think whenever I see that question, it just makes me think of kind of what Aaron was saying earlier. Of we can we can hit these more broad topics prior to getting into really deep conversations about these things. So it's a nice framework as you move forward. So something we're doing next month is like women's history and rec. And I told my marketing students, just go and look for yourself, and then we'll start having these conversations as we get further into it of what we want that to look like. But I think for any major awareness month, you could potentially do something like that to keep it rec focused if you'd like. But I would say look to the campus. What's the campus, demographics? What disparities are happening in the community? Are they also happening in the university? And maybe address those and provide support through rec. But it's still important to be real and open and honest about what's going on in your community and how you can help them. And I think rec is a great way to support, relieve stress, and help students. So
Thanks, Amber. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add?
Yeah, and this is a great question because it came up this afternoon with me and some of the students because we were doing some research for Women's History Month, and they were like, "Why are we, trying to recreate stuff? Can we just share it?" And I was like, "Yeah, definitely. Let's share what's going on campus. We don't have to provide the exact same experience because duplicating resources is we don't have to do that. We definitely don't. I think on keeping it specific to recreation and to help eliminate the opportunity to replicate is to kind of identify who is not participating with us. Like, what does that look like? Who is not? And then we just make genuine connections to hear what they need to be able to offer them a recreation experience. So being humble enough to say, hey, we're the experts in recreation. Yes, 100%. You're the experts of your experience. I saw a group on our campus that's taking an urban hike. So instead of going deep into the woods and having a very high technical skilled hike, it's like, hey, can we do something walking around? And I wouldn't call Boone urban, but walking around downtown Main Street of Boone, North Carolina, as their space. So really thinking of the connections we need to make with the people to listen, to be able to design with them in mind, I think will open the space for the EDI work because we have to get creative in what it is that they need because there's a barrier for them participating. And it might be a program, it might be a service, it might be a feel when it comes into our facility. And that's doing the research of their needs will be the EDI work. So it doesn't have to be very much prescripted or prescribed as to step 1, step 2, step 3. It's like if we put the person first, then we'll do the work to follow.
Great, thank you. And just on my own campus, we are just trying to be included in the larger DEI conversations or EDI conversations because we're quickly realizing that there are these larger work groups that have people from every single department, and then campus recreation was missing from a well-being, like a campus-wide student well-being workshop, or not workshop, but work team. So a couple of us put ourselves on that. And we were like, why weren't we contacted? Like, what did you forget about us? And they were like, oh, well, people just go there to work out. And it's like, no, if you're having a broader conversation about barriers to entry and barriers to access and well-being, campus recreation should be involved in that. So that's been kind of interesting. Alejandro, do you have anything that you would like to add?
Not too much. I think with that question, just because just be completely transparent, there's not the biggest initiatives that I have done, but it did get me thinking about if I wanted to approach this, where could I go to get those great resources from? And I know there's at least 4 individuals that come to mind. Daryl Lovett, April Lovett, Damon Pryor. I know they're very high in EDI, and seeing what they have done to be able to kind of get that get those questions answered, if that makes sense. So just because that's just something that came to mind. So
Great, thank you. And I'm going to send it on over to Amber for some Twitter shoutouts.
Yes, so if you're watching this right now, y'all can join in on the conversation on Twitter. We also do some rec chats, but I'm adding the questions that we've been asking to Twitter, to our Twitter feed. So you can always scroll through, answer the questions at your own pace, whenever it's convenient. But we do have a couple that came in, and I thought they're pretty awesome. I'll just use first names, but Mark talked about equity sequence training for students by Title Equality, and he also shared one that he helped co-create specifically for sports and rec, and he has the link as well, so we'll pin that on our Twitter. If you're interested, you can take a look at that, but that's by Bonobo. And then to one of our answers, Brenna said, for the can you recommend trainings or certifications that can help for students or professionals, they responded with disaster/emergency preparedness and how rec plays a part to those that are evacuated or affected, which I think is a really important part. If you get that, if you have that EDI mindset framework that's been done, approaching those situations can help so much with just having a little bit of, this is my personal experience. Everyone has their own personal experience. And I think it helps lead with compassion and support. So I really like that they put that there, because when we talk about well-being, environmental well-being is one of those. And it's not just the aesthetics and ergonomics, it's also safety aspects. So rec plays a huge part in risk management and disaster emergency preparedness. So I really appreciate Brenna for adding that to, for answering that question on Twitter. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. And if you're watching this and it's not live, then you can totally hop over to Twitter and see what folks have put on. We're also going to be writing a recap of this and making sure that all of our recommendations and suggestions and personal stuff are somewhere, so you can see what we're doing and utilize those resources as well, because we would love to have this be a continued conversation. So as we are hopefully moving through this year, which is not a normal year, what are some ideas that y'all have to facilitate DEI trainings or workshops in the future? And whoever, maybe Erin, would you like to start?
Wonderful, because this is going to be part of my future job that I'm moving into. So I'm really excited to think about this. To be intentional and do what I can and realize that this is a lifelong learning process. So it's like pulling together information and creating, I like the creating our own space, and also seeking out and asking advice for others, and to not recreate the wheel is really what it boils down to. And then involve the students in the process, just like we do the programs, creating committees, creating that open dialogue, that safe space to be vulnerable is very important for the work, to have these hard conversations. And then ask myself, is this a checkbox or is this going to be impactful? So what is my motivation in doing it? Just to get it done, or is it, it can more come from it? So to create the workshops in the future, knowing too, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be progress. So going back to the mention at the beginning of the broadcast is, where can the movement happen? And movement, big or small, is movement. And so giving myself the grace to, want to move in that framework to be able to provide these spaces, and then reflection about the trainings and workshops, and being vulnerable to what can come out of it, to be able to do more. So it's a lifelong, it's not going to be one and done, and it's constant. So to not let this get behind or anything else.
Thank you so much, Erin. Alejandro, do you have anything?
Yes. I think coming back to, utilizing what the resources that are out there. So like, let's just take, for instance, NERSA, has done their part definitely on being able to provide like opportunities to be part of things that does revolve around EDI or DEI. So I think as as it was mentioned too by Aaron, having some sort of like book club maybe. You can have, I think, and it was one of you all that discussed it on our last meeting, like that using the cards to be able to create those discussions too, as well as like maybe even have a virtual dish it up conversation to get comfortable being uncomfortable kind of type thing. Um, so I think those could be, something formidable in the future, because for one, it mixes it up, gives different opportunities for people to want to be part of and see how they can, participate.
Great, thank you so much. Amber, what about you?
Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I was messing with Twitter. But for ideas of facilitating DEI trainings and workshops, to echo, Aaron was just saying, just being intentional. So I think, NERSA has a lot of resources right now that when we have that capacity, we can have those conversations from the pro staff, right? For right now, that capacity is not there for us, so we're trying to push them to these resources that we have on campus. But a big thing we don't want to do is spend a lot of time trying to get these trainings the way we want them, but not being able to follow through as much as we want to for the students. So we're really trying to keep in mind that capacity and planning for this way out in advance so that we're not burn out by the time we want to talk about it, because we had to do a really big push for it. So leaning on NERSA and leaning on the workshops and conversations that have already been had, and talking to the students about that, and just being intentional and open and honest with them. I am definitely not an expert in this subject, but I am constantly trying to learn more. And I think, like what we've all said here, if you can make that forward progress, that's more than what a lot can. It's more than a lot can say, right? So, keeping that forward progress as we go.
Great, thanks so much. And just based off of what y'all have said, my idea that just came to me from what y'all are doing or thinking about is creating a student professional development committee or a student committee of some type that has students and is focused on creating student professional development and DEI focused like workshops and seminars. I think that would be a really good way to get that student buy-in and kind of spread the, work on or pull from other people's capacity and give them a really good opportunity to build kind of those like good transferable skills to kind of help them in whatever it is that they're doing later on, but also help create that buy-in amongst students to attend programs, especially if they are just like unpaid opportunities, which that is, I think, also something that is important for us to kind of chat about briefly is if we're able to actually pay students for these types of trainings, and then if not, what does your buy-in and what does your attendance look like? And for us, we've been able to include the DEI portions of things in our like all-staff trainings and leadership trainings. So we have been able to pay students for them, but we also haven't been able to get any like standalone programming off the ground or any additional things off the ground for the students. And I can imagine that we would not be able to pay them if we were offering just like things that were viewed as optional student development opportunities. Alejandra, what about you? Are you able to pay students for these opportunities?
So it does. We do have to weigh the options on what is going to be considered for pay, just because, especially again, past post pandemic, everybody got hit hard. we had to make budget cuts and everything of that nature. So it's kind of a yes and no. I would say, fortunately, right now, for the trainings that we have put on, whether it's with our student leadership committee to help facilitate any important discussions or planning that we have been able to pay them. And any kind of, like, those quarterly trainings, we have been able to pay them. I think those unique ones, though, that does, let's just say, want to do a discussion and kind of like have a focus group or anything like that, come in here during the month of February. That might be more of that optional type, where it's not more if we're assessing like their learning, if that makes sense. So usually when it comes into that, that's where we're able to pay, but we've been sort of fortunate so far.
Thank you. And then Aaron or Amber, do you have any insight with that? Amber, I see it. Aaron.
No, I'm sorry. I was like, a lot like the others are able to do internal work that we're creating, or we're finding the sources and trying to share out. But anything external, we haven't even started the conversation yet. So I don't know. I don't know if we're able to pay people. And I would advocate for us to be able to pay people and compensate them for their time. And but I don't know.
So I'll be brief on this, but during the summer, we had a professional development series for our student workers. And we started off with an interest form. We said, hey, we're going to be upfront. This is not going to be paid, but we're going to put in effort. If y'all would like to participate in this, let us know. So at that point, our numbers kind of dwindled from the pandemic. So I think at that point we had about 50 student workers. So we sent it out to all of them, kind of gave them a preface of what we would like to do. So we did a lot of the NERSA core competencies. We also did Clifton strengths. And then we did talk about a little bit about diversity, equity, inclusion. But from that interest group, I think we had 13 that said, yes, I want to do this. I understand it's not paid. I understand that we will have to meet in person in the game room when it's closed on whatever day, or I think at this point, yeah, we weren't open on the weekends and we were like reduced hours anyway. So it was specific times for us to go in there when the facilities were closed, for us to have those conversations. So from the interest forms, we asked them, like, what do you want to get out of this? What are you expecting? And that kind of helped inform some of those conversations to see where everybody's at. So I guess that is something we did do for a little bit of DEI in that. But we were very straightforward that was not going to be paid. And, hopefully we can continue to work and get to the point where we can do those things. I think stuff right now that we're pushing towards is like, hey, this is a free lunch opportunity. Go to this workshop and learn about that and then tell us how it went. But we do pay for them to go to like the Stop the Bleed trainings at UPD. So why wouldn't we, that would be my argument there. So if we're going to pay for them to do some risk management trainings, that's part of that professional development is understanding the DEI side. So I will say it can happen though. If it's just budget is not possible at that moment, I think students want to learn and to be developed. Like they need that. And it feels good. It's very hard to do when you're at capacity, but it feels really good when you can get it done and you can lean on your colleagues to help you do those things. So it was during the summer, during it not as busy of a time. I know Rochelle's like, summer, are you kidding? But during the summer, it was good for us. We don't have a pool or any sort of natatorium or anything like that. So yeah, that's my answer for that one.
Well, and I think a broader question, just based off of what you said about paying for one training and not the other, is like, what message does that send about the value of DEI training versus risk management training? And again, I totally understand like budgets and all of that type of stuff, especially if you're like in the middle of a budget cycle and there isn't the money and everything for it. But I think that's been a big conversation in the 5.5 years I've been at Western, is being intentional with the money that we are spending on student development, because it's super important to invest in students, because if you invest in them, then they will invest also in you. And so I think I feel like obviously I'm on board with like, I think we literally should be able to pay students for anything that has their time. It's like, are you coming to any type of trainings? In an ideal world, I would pay them for everything. But yeah, I think the budgetary concerns are definitely something that's a little bit challenging. And again, creating student buy-in, I think a lot of times if you're able to offer a paid opportunity, that is a good way to kind of start that initial buy-in. And then it's been really interesting with on the student side of things for us, we've had a really large student buy-in. And then on the professional staff side of things, I think a lot of folks are trying to find the capacity to add kind of one more thing onto their plate to kind of fully buy into doing additional like DEI work, again, without a framework necessarily from our university. So kind of creating the pro staff buy-in at the different levels. Like Aaron, I really appreciate what you said about meeting people where they are and understanding that everyone has their own journey and is moving at their own pace. That's been very difficult for me to like wrap my head around. And I have to keep telling myself I'm not special and everyone is in their own places and my journey is very different from everyone else's. And so it's okay if people's priorities are not mine. So does anyone else have any kind of quick tips or anecdotes about ways that you've been able to create student or pro staff buy-in into kind of DEI work, kind of trainings or programs? Maybe let's start with Amber.
So I should have saved this example for this question, but the summer pro staff development I think was really eye-opening for us to see that our students do want to be engaged with. We just didn't know what to expect when we sent out the interest form because we've been doing this whole COVID thing and reduced hours and everybody's kind of tired of being resilient, right? And so we just didn't know what we were going to expect when we offered something that was unpaid, to the point now where we go, okay, we can up it a little bit. Maybe we can do this training. We'll do breakfast and lunch are provided. We just come ready to work and talk. As we approach that budget cycle, kind of what she's saying, that of herself saying that we can intentionally plan and budget for those student opportunities and student development that we really feel are going to help them be well-rounded professionals. Because not every single student who leaves the rec is going to be a rec professional. They're going out to do such a wide variety of jobs and careers that is the one thing that's constant. If they can have that framework and understanding, it's not only going to help them stand out, but it's going to do what it's supposed to help advocate and encourage diversity. So I think a lot of it is just in that budgetary planning phase, having those conversations then of what do we want to do? What could this look like? How much money do we have to do this? And can we do those small conversations like what Aaron was saying in those built-in trainings or meetings that we already have? So something like that.
Thank you. And then Aaron, what about you?
I think my approach to create buy-in is celebrating when growth happens, wherever that may be. It might be as simple as putting pronouns on name tags, and then that's the movement that we made. We didn't really talk about it, but we're going to talk about why next, right? We definitely need the why, not just to do it. But it's like, so what wins and what celebrations? Because if it becomes a motivator to celebrate when we do make movement, that may snowball effect the rest of the work to be done. So if it's celebrating, Amber, those people that came to the training, although we wanted it 100, but 20 came, celebrating that 20, right? Because the impact you had on the 20 is going to kind of grow. It's a spider web approach. So finding those motivators of why people would want to do this work, and then do what work we can, whatever it can. So if pronouns are not an option, where else can we go to make the work done? And any work, the visible ones help, but the any work is great work, and it only leads to more work.
Thank you so much. Then Alejandro, what about you?
Um, for me, when it comes, definitely if it's going to be unpaid training, I think, or unpaid opportunity, but obviously is of value and purpose is just as Amber and Aaron mentioned, being transparent up front. But I think, and I think also it's what do you want to hear in the realm of EDI? And, especially if you're not familiar with a lot of the topics, maybe define what are those like top five, right now, anti-racism or anything, you know, um, and or trans or anything that, yeah, again, what is right there that is very much talked about, and then having them choose. And I think with that too, it's like really emphasizing you have a voice. Like when you come to this thing, you have a voice, and then that would help trigger for us to know that we're definitely taking it seriously. We're well equipped. We're ready to go, and we want to see what we can do to help out. And then I think it would be really cool, to if I were to think about buy-in, you know, to also focus on like the positivities of what we can bring to the table, the like a diversity cookbook, and think about, hey, one of these meetings or whatever we may do through this scheduling that we have is everybody bring a dish that's from your culture or anything like that, and like a potluck, so then therefore you're not spending money but you're getting that food right there, but you're also appreciating everybody else's of what they bring to the table. And then kind of getting back to maybe some more of a impactful way, not just discussing, but doing. Maybe looking up a charity, mental health awareness. What can but obviously you have to figure out how can you do that donations within colleges. But I think that'd be, really a really cool way to get somebody active rather than just talking about it. And then, those sprinkling those little things, articles. Again, bringing in NERSA, we had that 21-day equity challenge, we had all those things. But given that mix, so yeah, get the interest, you have a voice, here's a schedule, what it looks like, let's rock and roll. So
Great, thank you. Yeah, and my last little thing on trying to create buy-in, especially on the pro staff level, is to just continue to have conversations. And that's kind of been my biggest thing, is to just have conversation after conversation after conversation. And eventually we'll get somewhere. So to wrap everything up, I would love to kind of hear maybe a brief reflection on your personal growth, maybe throughout the last 2 years, or things that you've learned, a couple things, maybe one or two things that have really stuck out to you in your kind of anti-racism and DEI journey over the last however long. Let's start with Aaron.
Yes, thank you. So briefly, a couple of things that I've learned about myself is that, and as a part of my journey, is that I work with people and I love working with people. And so that's my internal motivator of wanting to do this work, because the more I can learn, the more I can be of help to as many people as possible in an impactful way. So it's not necessarily the numbers of people, and that I'm seeking to understand. I'm seeking to understand what it is that I said a little bit earlier. I'm an expert in sport. People are experts in their experience. So I can provide the schedule, I can provide the equipment, I can provide the space and get people there. It's for them to decide what that experience looks like. And that's my what's within my control, right? So that's another piece, what's within my control and what's not. And that I can do this. I can do this work, and I'm not going to be perfect about it. I'm going to mess up. I'm going to say, I'm sorry. I'm going to learn from it, reflect and grow. And it's a lifelong process. But it kind of connected with me when in this space where recreation is kind of the breeding ground from this work. We talk about pushing ourselves to be uncomfortable. I physically have done that when I've been working out. I have physically done that in playing the sports that I play. I've pushed myself physically to be uncomfortable because I knew the results And once I got there, once I got through the pain, once I learned, and once I was able to recover, the growth that I had because I pushed myself to be uncomfortable in a safe space is is impactful. And so that's the same space I think about mentally. It's like, can I push myself mentally in a safe space to expose myself to different thoughts and beliefs to be able to grow and do this work? And I can because I can physically do it. So it's like, taking care of myself, preparing myself, doing all the precautions that I would do in trading, same thing in working with people. So I can get there.
Thank you. That's a really good way to kind of like visualize that and like make that very approachable, I think, for folks who maybe aren't used to that type of mental work. Amber, what about you?
That was amazing, Erin. I love that visualization and metaphor that you just did, because I feel like that the pandemic has kind of, we've all had to push, but I like the way that you're saying that, because it's, you push, you feel the pain, you learn, and you grow from that. And it's the same thing mentally. So that's fantastic. This should be our ending note. So in 2019, I did a joint role so I was fitness and wellness coordinator. And then due to some hiring freezes, we had some critical positions we could not fill. So I was fitness and wellness coordinator / civic engagement coordinator. And whenever they pitched that to me, I was terrified, because I am, okay, I've voted before, I've done community service. I feel like I'm not, just like a horrible person. So yeah, like I know some civic stuff, that's really where I felt like I'm not an expert in this. I can't do this. I shouldn't be having these conversations. I shouldn't be leading them. That's how I felt within that first month. And talking with the director and talking with the people that were over in that department, I told them we were about to start a civil discourse discussion. I said, look, I'm comfortable leading these. I know I wasn't comfortable, but I can lead these. I know what's going on. I know the questions I want to ask, but I am scared that I'm going to offend someone, hurt someone, or what I'm trying to say is going to be misinterpreted. And they really helped me see that we're all in the same boat. You're not setting out to start a program to hurt someone's feelings or to make someone feel invalid. But if that happens, let's stop and talk about it. So it really opened my eyes to, okay, just because you don't have all of this experience and education in this, but you're working towards it, and you're working towards those free opportunities, like what Rochelle mentioned, that we can have those conversations. We set up those ground rules. It's okay. I was so terrified of making a mistake within that first month. And that was during the 2020 election. So we made it out. We made it through it with nothing crazy. And I have no crazy stories from my time as a civic engagement coordinator. And it actually helped me realize how much rec is aligned with civics, that it was actually a really good fit. Having fitness and wellness / civic engagement was a very good fit. So I definitely, that's always a really good partnership, I think, for rec. But it helped me see that I am much more than what I thought, and so it was a good validation and opportunity for me to learn. So if you're scared or nervous or don't feel like you can do it, just try anyway.
Thank you for sharing, Amber. I really appreciate it. Alejandra, what about you?
Perfect. What Amber and Erin said, and I think you hit it on the nail. Not being afraid of or apprehensive about learning new things, especially when you thought it's not so much you knew it all, but you thought you were on a very like fair, conscious like level. And one of the things that like I was like, what? Especially when I did the 21-day challenge with NERSA, is implicit bias. Though that stereotype that you don't even know you're creating in your head. And I'm like, wait, I'm a Mexican American here. How could I do that? And I'm not trying to sound, above myself or anything, but just like I felt like, I grew up around a very cultural environment and had very different different types of friends. And so, but to think on that level and the examples I heard, I was like, I've done that before. That's crazy. So definitely it makes me more curious to read more about EDIs, and being a lot more aware of the conversations that are happening around me, from my friends to my family to my student workers, and really considering what they're saying and where they're coming from, instead of just kind of blocking it out and say that's silly. I don't want to learn that. And I think also, for me, just to end that off, is be proud of who I am, be proud of myself either way. And know that I am trying to find out what's the right thing to do, and how to learn that the best, and immerse myself in it as much as possible. So
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate y'all's perspective and just that very honest kind of reflection about your journey. I have learned, I'm going to shout out Portland State University here, because when I was an undergrad, and I was on the Rec Clubs Council, if you were in the Rec Clubs office and you said something a little off color or a little like sketch, you would hear a chorus of rephrase. So I started hearing that when I was 19. And I also grew up in kind of an ignorant area. And so a lot of the things that were normal for me to kind of function within in high school, I got to college. And Portland was a very different environment from where I grew up. And a lot of those behaviors were not acceptable. And I wasn't like a Nazi or anything, but it was just like not the nicest. So I really appreciated people who were willing to have nice, like genuine conversations with me about, maybe you shouldn't say that, or why do you think that, or what do you mean by that? And those conversations helped me to develop the skills to have those conversations over the last 13 years. I have always been super non-confrontational, really don't like to talk about my feelings. I like to avoid conflict at all costs. And that's not helpful in using my privilege to create sustainable change for everyone else in my communities. And I didn't even realize that I was doing it. But with my grandma, she, bless her, but she's, 87 and from the South. And she would be like, they're taking our statues down. And then I would explain to her the history of how those statues were funded by racist white women and all of this other stuff. And I'd find the literature, I'd print it off and mail it to her. I'd cite the sources, like I'd write essays about this stuff and send them to her. And through having that dialogue with my grandma over the last 10 years, I have been able to, and I always was like, oh, it's just these kind of weird conversations with my family. Like, that's not a big deal. But I didn't realize that was setting me up to then, as an adult over the last probably 3 to 5 years, begin to have conversations with almost strangers. Like acquaintances and people who are in my professional circle and people who go to the CrossFit gym I go to, and even people in the grocery store that say something, to have those conversations that I normally would have tried to stay away from. But yeah, I've really been able to kind of lean into that discomfort and understand that it is more helpful to actually have a tough conversation with somebody than not. Because I would always regret not saying something when I knew I should say something, or I had the capacity to, reduce harm potentially given to other people that is in my realm. So, yeah, I love, Aaron, that you love people, but I like the people I like, and those are NERSA people. So, shout out to our NERSA fam, because we're the best. Love y'all. So, yeah, I really appreciate everybody that hopefully has either tuned in to watch this or is watching this in the future. And hopefully your biggest takeaway is there is no step that's too small, and you can have a conversation. You can do this work. You may say the wrong things, but that's okay. That's actually a good thing. And you should be uncomfortable while you're doing this work, especially if you're a cishet white person, because it's time to drive these conversations and create sustainable changes for our rec fam, and not only for our colleagues, but also for our students and our broader university communities. So thanks to everybody for coming to the show today. And yeah, we're going to be posting some of our resources, or all of our resources, in Twitter and Instagram. And until next time, I hope everyone has a great rest of your week.